You're tuning in to the Black Hollywood Live Network, featuring news, interviews, and commentary on all things Black Hollywood. Hollywood redefined. From Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies. This is Black Hollywood Live. Justice is served. Featuring the week's roundup and commentary on legal news. Black Hollywood Live. Hollywood redefined.
You're listening to Black Hollywood Live.
And now, the host for Black Hollywood Live, Justice is Served.
Welcome, fellow fans of Black Hollywood Live. Today on Justice is Served for May 6, 2015, we are talking about a lot of great legal topics. I am your host, Phil Svitek, filling in for Sarah Azaria, but we have Chelsea Galicia.
Hi, Phil.
Returning. How are you, Chelsea?
Good. Thank you so much for filling in.
Of course. Always happy to be here. Of course, after this weekend, everyone's still talking about the fight, but we get to talk about it from a very different perspective than most people would even imagine, and that is, of course, the legal perspective, starting with Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah. So he is now facing a new lawsuit as a result of an interview that he gave to Katie Couric a few weeks before the fight. It was an interview to help promote the fight, and in that interview, Katie Couric gently brought up the domestic violence issues. And about that, he said, quote, "Did I kick, stomp, and beat someone? No, that didn't happen. Did I restrain a woman that was on drugs? Yes, I did. So if they say that's domestic violence, then you know what? I'm guilty. I'm guilty of restraining someone." Well, the woman that he...
Josie Harris.
Yeah, Josie Harris is the mother of 3 of his children. Apparently they were together for 18 years. And she is pretty pissed off about this statement. She is suing him for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and negligent infliction of emotional distress, just in case the intentional one doesn't fly, for these statements. Her version of events, if you look at the lawsuit itself, is really horrifying. Apparently, one night in 2010, he was waiting for her when she got home. She got home and he was just berating her about where she was and who she was with. It got pretty intense and she called the cops. The cops came and he tried to have her removed from his property. The cops actually got him to agree to leave. But then, and this part is so sad, at 5 a.m. the next morning, he went to the side door and convinced his 9-year-old son to let him in. And when he did, he went straight for Josie Harris, who was sleeping on the couch, and just grabbed her phone, grabbed her hair, and started beating her, dragging her across the room while the children were watching. In fact, Floyd had brought a friend with him who kept the kids back from doing anything, as he again berated her for who she was seeing, text messages. Apparently, he's quite the jealous guy, and she was pleading for her kids to go get somebody. Floyd told the kids, don't go anywhere. I mean, can you imagine the position of those kids to have to watch their father beat their mother and then have to pick sides of, they're both being asked to go get help? That's just awful. And so the 9-year-old did run away and go get security. Floyd took off, but he did turn himself in the next day. Of course, the woman received medical treatment, was taken to the hospital by ambulance. So this is a much different version of events than Floyd's claim that he was restraining a woman on drugs. Obviously, she thinks, or she says, that she was not on drugs. I don't imagine that somebody would find it believable that he found her asleep on the couch and had to restrain her. I don't see how this makes any sense at all.
I think the bigger thing, I look at it from a PR perspective, just no comment to the question, and you would avoid any of this. Whether or not this is true, if you want to go after her in some sort of way, take it to a legal court, but don't, you're on Katie Couric, just say no comment.
Well, he knows.
I can't talk about it.
He knows that he's a very disliked person. He actually blames the fact that he's black, rich, and outspoken as for the real reasons why people don't like him. That's not the reason I don't like him.
But there's, I mean, no,
So
there's plenty of black, rich, and outspoken people who are likable.
Right. Or even if I don't like them as much, like Kanye West, for example, has a lot of fans, has a lot of people who don't like him. But my dislike of Floyd Mayweather is leaps and bounds beyond my just non-preference for Kanye. So I think that's BS. I think that it was trying to get more support, more viewers, promote the fight, and to be more likable, he had to address this, because otherwise all that's out there is the convictions, and this was his way to kind of make himself look good.
You know what? I mean, here's how you get people like you put on a good fight. This is the worst joke in the world, and I understand this, but had he been more offensive in the actual fight with Pacquiao, like he was with his wife, he might have actually gotten some fans. I'm going to stick to that.
Okay, that's pretty awful.
It is, but I mean, but you talk about a guy like, outside of the legal, just do your job, right? And people might actually like you. I mean, Pacquiao is no saint himself. There's the, from a public relations perspective, people dislike him because of his stance on gay marriage. But you know what? Overall, a much more liked person than Floyd Mayweather.
Right. Yeah. Once you got domestic violence convictions, it's kind of hard to overcome when people know about it, and then it's this brutal. I mean, and he brought this on himself. You're right, he shouldn't have said anything, because then this woman wouldn't have sued him, and now we probably wouldn't be looking at the gory details of what happened. And I think
it just opens up a book. And if you wanted to pursue this where you were wrongfully, this was actual fact, then you could pursue it in a much quieter way through the legal system. And then when you won the case, depending on how the terms are, then you could proclaim it like, hey, I just won this court case.
Right.
This is what came out of it.
You're right. He could have, if he wanted to, sue her if she had made up some statement that got him convicted. But obviously that's not what happened. So I think he's just more of a piece of something than I even thought before I read the lawsuit. This
is just going to be, because it's going to open up more and more things, deeper and deeper.
So I don't know what her chances are of actually getting $20 million. She'd have to show some pretty hefty damages. She's an aspiring TV personality, an author, and if she's done some work in those fields, that might help her, because people don't want a public figure that is known as a drug abuser or an author. They're not going to get a great following. So she might have a really strong case for damages, but she definitely has a strong case for Mayweather is disgusting.
He's done domestic violence.
All right, so speaking of Pacquiao, shall we talk about this poor guy?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so there's a bunch of people suing out of Nevada, suing. Actually, it's just two residents from Nevada suing Pacquiao for not disclosing certain things that he should have about the fight, specifically his shoulder.
Right.
And that it may or may not have been injured to the extent it was a rotator cuff, right?
Yep.
And they're a day before, you have to kind of fill out a questionnaire by regulation of we'll call them the fight committee. And, he answered that incorrectly or falsely.
Right.
And that's what's being held over his head now.
Yeah, so these two guys started a class action lawsuit for $5 million. The people in this class are supposed to be people who bought tickets to be there in person, bought the pay-per-view, and even betted. First of all, I don't think that this is actually a class that's going to be certified. These people are not similarly situated. I don't think. The guy who spent $100 on the pay-per-view is not in the same position as the guy who spent, $50,000 to attend live. But be that as it may, I don't know if there's really a claim that can be made by people who bought all of this stuff before Pacquiao even had to disclose the injury. So that form that you're talking about, he filled out the day before. And he did fill it out under penalty of perjury. He marked no under the question of any shoulder surgery that needed to be looked at by a doctor. He did have a rotator cuff, but the thing is that these fighters fight with injuries all the time. So it's hard to know when is an injury so severe that it would actually make a difference in their performance. Mayweather said that he was fighting with injuries. So it's not as easy as we would think he had a rotator cuff tear. He should have disclosed it because it was going to make a difference to the outcome of the fight. Pacquiao said it didn't make a difference to the outcome of the fight. I don't know if these people will be very successful in this claim, but I do think that even though they disclosed it to the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, that it's not the same thing as disclosing it to the Nevada State Athletic Commission. So he might be in trouble with the commission for that, but to the public, does he owe you and I a duty to tell us?
No,
about
it's like to me, it's like any other sport. Some teams will say, "Hey, this player's playing with an injury," or this. It's not necessarily public information for us to know, who is and who isn't playing with an injury, and to that extent, it can also be mental. The guy could lie. He could lie to his trainers and things like that, and he could still have a great game, and no one knows that he's playing through the most pain he's ever been dealt in his entire life.
Right.
I know plenty of athletes who do that on high levels, whether the Olympics, whether the World Cup, whatever the case may be. It's just is what it is.
It's part of it.
And he could deep down believe that it didn't affect him.
Right.
And I don't know, having seen the fight myself, maybe he would have done a little better. But I didn't see it as a hindrance. I'm not a boxing expert, so I don't know.
It seems that when he was throwing the punches, they were pretty hard, and not all of them landing. But the reason he wasn't as aggressive, I think, towards the end, as most of us would have hoped, is because he said he thought he was already winning, so he didn't need to do some over-the-top aggressive move. So I think that's why he lost, not the shoulder injury.
Yeah. So,
all right.
And with the class act, like if this was to go through, what does that mean? What in terms of class action? Like if these people just get their money back? What does that mean?
I'm usually class action lawsuits are great for attorneys, not so great for the people in the class. Maybe they'll get a voucher to another pay-per-view event, or it's not usually exactly the money that you put out. I mean, it could be, but it's very
That's what
difficult.
I'm saying.
So it's like a gift certificate, or have you been a part of a class action? You get something in the mail that says, do you own this car, or do you have this cell phone service, and they did something wrong, so you get a $20 gift card to something. So it's the people in the class don't generally come out big winners, but attorneys live these cases.
And I just like to see the effort more and other stuff.
Yeah, I know people.
You didn't like the fight. Everyone gets it. So fine. It is what it was, and everybody move on.
I like it.
It's not because of the shoulder injury. It's not because it just wasn't a great fight. That's it.
Yeah.
End of story. Speaking of actual, to me, greater topics of discussion, rather than just Pacquiao, Freddie Gray.
Yeah.
And Baltimore. This story isn't going away.
No, not anytime soon. This last week, the Baltimore City State Attorney Marilyn Mosby is being sort of hailed as a hero for charging the 6 officers that were involved. Not only have they been charged with some pretty serious crimes, but she said they didn't even have the grounds to arrest him in the first place. This was the case where the 25-year-old guy was just standing around, made eye contact with a police officer, and took off running. Then the police caught up to him and are claiming that this knife that he had on him was illegal. Turns out it's not illegal, and arrested him. Where things go really wrong is in the restraining of him, and then the way that they cuffed him, shackled him, put him in the police van, stomach down, head first, and drove him around. What I assume that happened is that they did this sort of rough riding thing where they accelerate really fast and then stop really fast to have them clash into the side of the van. Baltimore City Police Department has been sued over this before. They've had to pay out millions of dollars to people who were injured in this way. Apparently that wasn't enough, and I think that that's what's going to be the most likely story of what happened here. The charges, like I said, are pretty serious. The most serious charge are faced by the police officer who drove the van and the ones who put him in the van for not restraining him and not getting him medical attention. The guy that was driving the van is the one being accused of a depraved heart second-degree murder, which is something that carries 30 years with it. And that's because I think that they have evidence that he was driving in an erratic manner in a way that he knew or really should have known was extremely dangerous to this man's well-being, and that's why he's looking at these serious charges. The other officers involved are accused of manslaughter, second-degree assault, and of the 6 that are charged, I think the only one that has a chance perhaps of not being convicted of something that will land her in jail for too long is the woman. And I'm not saying this because I'm a woman, but because what I understand is that what she did is she came onto the scene when she discovered Freddie Gray unresponsive in the van, and she kind of talked to him but didn't do anything when he was unresponsive. She didn't get him medical attention, and I imagine that her attorney will try and show that at that point Freddie Gray was already deceased, and so nothing that she did or didn't do would have made a difference. But for the rest of them, I don't see how they are going to escape conviction on something, and I think they should. Do you?
I do think they should. Obviously, I've heard a lot of opinions from Black Hollywood Live about this already, whether on This Week or Black Tea Party and everything else. To me, the interest, obviously, this is an issue that needs to be dealt with, but then I'm also interested always how kind of it affects everything else, because it's, like I said, it's not going away anytime soon, and the reason why that is because what happens here is going to affect the nation.
Yeah.
And how kind of things are dealt overall. Where in
If
Maryland,
we stay vigilant, if we keep paying attention, if we sort of start to ignore it, maybe not so much. But I think if we keep paying attention, hopefully it's helping that we're talking about it on these shows to keep attention on the issue. Then the eyes of the nation will still be on it, and we'll be looking very closely at what people do and these convictions, and hopefully the convictions will be a deterrent.
Well, what do you? Speaking of that, because that brings up a good point about the coverage that it can receive. Obviously, there's even debate on how it's being covered in general, right? What are your thoughts on that? How that's being handled? You said we need to continue these conversations and have the right conversations. Are we having the right conversations?
Well, last week we talked about the protesting and the riots, and how a lot of the media was focusing on the people who are breaking the law, destroying property, setting fires, and that is not where the attention should have been. Sure, that deserves some attention. It's newsworthy, but it's not the bigger issue here. And so, that was a point I was trying to make last week, is let's keep this conversation on what really matters here. The thing that's going to be with us after the rioters are sent home. And that is this culture of police brutality, specifically against minorities. But I think this week, because these charges came out, the protests, at least the ones that got out of hand, the ones that were illegal, have simmered down. So now we really can focus on the conduct of these officers and what it means, not just about these 6 individuals, but about the culture of police departments across the country, seeing as how this is no isolated incident.
So how do you, to me, the riots, obviously they signify the unrest in the sense that people are frustrated, right? I mean, I've never heard of or seen more riots than we've seen just even the past 6 months, let alone a year, 2 years, whatever the case may be. You can go back to maybe the 60s, but I wasn't there, right? And part of that is, people are frustrated. They don't know they don't know the right steps to take to change this. It clearly keeps happening.
Yeah.
So if you're an everyday person, what is an action that you could take apart from a riot?
Well, protesting peacefully, as Dr. Martin Luther King would have advocated for us to do, is one thing. The other thing that we can do is vote, not just for president, but locally, really getting involved. I know this sounds kind of, silly maybe to most people, and who has time for that, but getting involved in local politics, local elections, state elections, these things really do matter. Who we put in positions of power is really important, and if they're not a representative voice of us, they're a representative voice of somebody. And so that's where, our vigilance has kind of just died, basically, is that we just stopped kind of paying attention. We fell asleep, basically. And so now staying awake, being a responsible member of this society, to be involved in what happens in our elections, in where we buy things, who we vote for. I mean, basically what I'm saying is that where you put your focus and your money makes a big difference. And it will trickle down all the way to how police behave. So I think that's it. I mean, it's not a very glamorous answer to get involved in politics and to be aware of what's going on in your local community, but I don't know any other way.
Fair enough. I mean, it rings true to kind of the legal perspective of ignorance of the law is no excuse. And so it's like, okay, even if you're not voting, well, it's going to affect you no matter what. And, obviously this is the unfortunate results that we keep seeing from it. Perhaps.
Right. And the other thing that needs to happen is that all of us personally need to figure out where we are, maybe not racist, a lot of us have a hard time acknowledging race, but where we see a divide between us and other people. Because as we can see with the 6 officers, some of them were black. So this isn't just necessarily a race issue. This is an issue where you see different people as being maybe less human than you are. You lose connection with, their humanity, that they are somebody's son, daughter, mother, father. And it's a personal development, spirituality thing for each individual to make sure that we remember that we are very much more the same than we are different. And I think if we all...
Well, that's a very much... I mean, I think humanity can grasp that, right? To an extent, obviously. But from what I understand, as a police, they beat that out of you as a police officer.
I mean, some of this happens in training, sure, but I think this is, on a deeper level. I don't know if just like police training itself would make the difference. I think this is not just action. This is an issue of consciousness, of, I don't know any other word, consciousness, and just a realization that we're, all people, and even if people break the law, that they are entitled to be treated like human beings. I wonder if sensitivity training in the form of turning police officers into, suspects for a day, have them be chased and arrested and put in the back of the van and, driven to the police station and, have them be, go to jail and be stripped down and sort of treat them, like, or put them through the process of how people go through in our justice system so that they have an understanding. I'm sure a lot of police officers would not like to sign up for that, but maybe something like that is necessary for them to really feel what it's like to be on the other side.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly an option. I don't think many people would do it voluntarily. I don't know, But let's move on, because I'm sure things will develop, and we'll be certainly talking about it. And check back in for all the other Black Hollywood Live shows. This is, like I said, this is a topic that's not going away, and we're going to cover it from many, many different angles here at Black Hollywood Live. Let's talk about Bruce Jenner. This is it's always two things colliding at once to create news, right? You have this, what people are raving about, the documentary that came out, or, the interview, the special, and he's being touted as brave and things like that, and yet he's dealing with a lawsuit.
Yeah. So this lawsuit stems from the that accident in February where he rear-ended a woman, Kim Howe, and she was pushed into oncoming traffic and killed. The interesting thing about this case is that it was filed by two stepkids. So this wrongful death lawsuit was filed by two stepkids. She doesn't have any remaining relatives. She had become a widow about 10 years ago. Her husband died in 2003. She had no biological children. She had no blood relatives living at home. These stepchildren are the only ones who could file such a claim. In some states, they actually wouldn't even be allowed to file a claim as stepchildren, but in California, they are. But even let's just say that Bruce was negligent, and I don't think it's that hard to show that he probably was. He wasn't driving carefully enough, and everything right now looks like it was his fault. He wasn't doing anything crazy wrong. He just wasn't being careful enough. So let's assume that they prove that he was negligent. The bigger problem in this case will be proving the damages, because Bruce could have been negligent all day and could have caused this death, but if there were no damages to the people filing the claim, then they don't really win a case at all. And in this case, it looks like, if you believe TMZ, there was not really much of a relationship between her and the kids. TMZ claims to have spoken to friends of hers that were very close to her, who said that Kim had virtually no relationship with these stepchildren. Stepchildren lived on the other side of the country, one in New York, one in Maine. So I don't see any really close relationship. I don't see that they can claim any economic loss, like income from her having passed. And it'll come down to really, was there much of a relationship that was lost?
I mean, yeah, it's one of those things that, I disagree with. I don't think they have a case, the stepchildren, but it's almost, going back to your point about humanity, it's almost sad that she has no one, and that in all essence she could just easily be if it wasn't for this case in this lawsuit, she would just be forgotten.
Maybe in the public's eye, yes. I know she meant a lot of people. She meant a lot to the people that she was very social with. She was an animal activist. She was very involved. So I know that she was really loved and respected and admired by people. So
could the lawsuit, could it be ruled, whatever comes out of it, that this, if the step kids win this, that it gets dispersed through these channels, charities and whatnot that she was involved with?
Well, actually, that's the thing.
Regardless of what the kids may want with that money, actually.
Well, she had a will set up before she passed. There was a trust set up for all of the properties that she had, and the money is all supposed to go to charity. She also, in that will, left money that went straight to charity, mostly animal organizations. Nothing was left to the stepchildren. So it's kind of supporting this idea that there really wasn't much of a relationship or an economic reliance on her. So I don't think that they're going to win much at all. Very low, maybe I'm going to venture to say not even $100,000, maybe about that much. Very low, six figures.
But you don't think that Bruce and his team, they're just going to want to settle, and therefore they're going typically if if you're a celebrity, the awful part of it is right off the bat. You could sue me for a crime I did not commit because I was in a completely different state at the time, and I could prove it to you. But to go through the process and paying lawyers and this and that would just be so great that we just settle it and I write you $100,000 check and that's it.
Well, it might, and I think it's Bruce's insurance company is going to handle it. I don't think Bruce himself will have to pay anything out. I'm sure he's the smart guy and had a lot of insurance, so I don't think the amount should be so high that it will exceed the amount and Bruce will be personally liable. So it does depend on how the insurance company wants to handle it. Many times they settle out of court. We may never even find out about how much the family gets, if anything.
My guess, if I had to guess, it's as low as $50,000 top 200.
All right, we'll see.
That is what I would guess
we'll
it to
see.
be.
I mean, there's really nothing else here. There's definitely no punitive damages. You know, if Bruce had been drunk or driving erratically, doing something that may have gotten him criminally charged in this incident, then maybe punitive. But there's really not much here.
Yeah.
It's saying a lot that even with not much there, you can get potentially, you know, a couple $100,000. But so is the state of our law right now.
I mean, unfortunately, that's unfortunately for a lot of these people that do this suing, especially if they're, you know, if these kids are doing it for the right reasons, fine. But if they're literally just looking at a paycheck, I mean, it's an easy way to make a paycheck, and it's unfortunate, but you know, that's the ugly side of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know these people. I haven't seen any interviews with them, so I don't want to judge them. But I guess I'm saying I will anyway. But it doesn't look like there is really, you know, a strong reason that, you know, they've actually lost something that they should sue for. But, you know, that's the law as it is right now.
There you go. All right, so there you have it for this week's edition of Justice is Served here on Black Hollywood Live. Thank you guys for joining us. In the meantime, if you guys want to talk further, obviously there's the comment box over on YouTube. You can comment on iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever you want, however you want, or for more direct kind of interaction, Chelsea has a Twitter.
Yes, at Chelsea Galicia.
There you go. And BHL Online is Black Hollywood Live's Twitter. Hashtag Justice is Served. If you want to kind of keep the conversation going that way. So however you want to talk with us, we're here. We love listening to your opinions because whether you have a law degree or not, there's always a perspective on these
what
things.
You think matters.
That's right. We'll see you next week with another Justice is Served.
From producers Maria Menounos, Dario Kristen, Tiana Hobson, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire BHL crew, we would like to thank you for supporting Black Hollywood Live, the first online broadcast network dedicated to African American entertainment. For questions and comments, contact us at info@blackhollywoodlive.com. Like us on Facebook, tweet us, or Instagram us at BHL Online. And I'm your BHL announcer, Scipio. Instagram me at Planet Scipio. Thank you for tuning in.
The views expressed here are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of BHL or its owners or principals.